So now we will go and we will do the session of the wilderness, which will be session 3. So we've looked at Genesis, that we've laid a foundation with Genesis. We've looked at Exodus, what was Exodus about? We've looked at Leviticus, when he calls. And now we look at Numbers. Now, Numbers is in our Bible, in the English Bible, it says Numbers, which really doesn't mean much. But in Hebrew, it's called Bamidbar. Now, Bamidbar is the word for Ba-Midbar. So, Ba-Midbar, which means in the wilderness. So, Midbar is wilderness. But in Hebrew, that Midbar has a root word, and it comes from another root word, which is Medaber, which is to speak. So he brings us into the wilderness so that he can speak to us. And then there's Dabar, and that is the root word which means word. So he brings us into the wilderness to speak. And that is why we've got Dabar, which is his word. So Medaber is going to speak his word. And then we've got Devarim, which is going to be the next book, which is the book of Deuteronomy, which is the book of Devarim. And Devarim, or Devarim, which is the book of words. So what he does is, in the book of Devarim, he repeats everything that he has spoken from Leviticus, some of the things from Leviticus, then Numbers and Exodus, and now he gives us a complete summary and speaks his words to us in the book of Deuteronomy, where he relays the whole message and gives all his words of what he has already spoken. So he repeats what he's already spoken. He repeats it and gives us all his words in the book of Deuteronomy, so that we really get the message. Because now he gives us his words and say, this is my words, now I want you to obey. So that's why I'm saying we were taken out of Egypt in Exodus, and then there's Vayikra, which is his instructions. Leviticus, Vayikra, he calls, which he gives us his instructions. And now he brings us into the wilderness. And what is the wilderness about? The wilderness is a place of where it is, be still and know that I am Yah. Psalm 46 verse 10, be still and know that I am Yah. There's no distractions of the world around you. Everything is open. You cannot hide behind a bush. You cannot hide because the rocks are small. It's arid. It's dry. There's no water. There's no vegetation. It's arid. That's the desert where we live. It's arid. You go outside and you can see a person in the distance, or you can see a camel in the distance, or you can see a shepherd with his sheep and his goats in the distance. You can't hide because there's no trees. Very seldom. The only where there's water gathered, that there, you know, where the water is, there will be a bit of vegetation. The rest of the place is absolutely arid and dry, and stones and rocks. But this is the place where we will be tested, and this is the place where we will be tested in what he's just called us in. So he calls us, and then we make the decision to obey and to become his priests. But the only way that you can truly become his priest is when you are going to be tested if you're going to keep that word or not. Just like Yahushua he learned obedience by what he suffered, and that was the trials that had to come his way, and the tests that he had to endure. So this is where we will truly know if we will be obedient to His word. The word that we say, because we can say that we love Him and that we can love the truth and that we love His truth. But we only once we are put to the test will we truly understand whether we are going to obey Him or not. And when we start, because, soon now, in the month of May, I think it's about the 23rd or so, we will then start the Torah portions of Numbers. So that's why I'm saying, as we come into that timing, we are going to understand that the tests are going to come our way. So that's why I'm saying Leviticus has been this time of where we've really been in the cleft of the rock, where Abba has been calling us and teaching us His words and teaching us the things that He's been speaking to us right now, so that we may be able to be equipped and make the decision that we're going to allow Him to clean us up. And if this is what the word says, we make a decision to say, Abba, my Father, work it in me that I may be, this thing that's there, I don't want it there, work it in me. And so these fears are coming up in this time of the wilderness. And this frustration is coming up in this time of where we are in this cleft of the rock. And there's a bit of complaining that can come our way. And the frustration of being at home and not being able to go outside. And, it's difficult. It's not easy. And these are all the little attitudes of the heart that are surfacing to the surface. But He is wanting to clean us up. Because let me tell you something. When you go back out there, you must know that you're going to go as a different person. Because the tests and the trials are going to come your way. And so we are going to look at this. Because we are going to look at the tests of the Israelites, and then we're going to look at the tests of Yahushua. Because at the end of the day, Yahushua himself was tested. And so no servant is greater than his master, so if he was tested, so will we be. So we're going to compare the tests in the wilderness, and so we need to understand that as we're going to work through the book of Numbers, it's going to be very important that when we start coming to the Torah portion readings of the book of Numbers, it's important that we're going to pay attention. Because it's important that I tell you now to start to pay attention, because we need to understand that just like the things that they're going to do, we ourselves are going to do it. And so we must not put ourselves in this place like me that can, when I started to read these things, I said, oh, Father, what a rebellious bunch of people. And He said, and do you think you're any better? And let me tell you something. All it took me was for me to have to sit in Israel. If I take what I had to endure last year, what I had to endure the last year before, what I've had to endure over the last 2 years, especially when the first time the Father separated me from my husband and my children for the 2 months that I was, almost 3 months, that I was separated from my husband and my children, when I was going through my first winter in Israel, and it's a bit of rain, and then it's the sandstorms, and then you are confined to your house, and I was alone. Okay, Elsie was there, but you're not really visiting many people, and you've got nobody around, and I was squirming like the worm. And I had said all these words to the Father, like, oh, Abba Father, I just want to be me and you alone. Oh, take me to a mountain where it's just me and you alone on this mountain. No problem. Now it's me and him in my room alone. Me and him in this apartment alone. Elsie would be there, but like I said, most of the time I was door closed in my room, squirming like the worm, crying my crocodile tears. And he said, but this is what you asked me for. Now that I give it to you, look and see the idols in your heart. Look and see the idols in your heart. Is your husband and your children not idols? You can't even go without them. Lay them down on an altar. And it was very difficult. And he'd asked me to do this many years before, and I said, yes, Father, they're not idols. I lay them down. And if you choose, and he says, the day if I have to choose, it's either me or them. Who will you choose? I said, Father, I choose you. Of course I choose you. You're right. When I'd wake up in the morning and I'm weeping and I'm saying to the Father, why would you do this to me? You see, until the test comes, you don't know what's in your heart. It's easy for you to turn around and say with your mouth, oh, of course, I will die for him. Oh, of course, you know what, I will forsake my family for him. It's easy to speak those words. But I tell you something, until you come and be like these Israelites that are going to be confronted by these tests, just like Yahushua was having to be put to the test, only then do you know how you're going to behave. And only then you will see the wickedness that is in your heart at the end of the day. Because until these things are revealed to us, we don't know what's there. And so we are going to look at Deuteronomy chapter 8. Because in Deuteronomy chapter 8, he now tells them, after they've been in the wilderness now, so they've been in their little wilderness experience, and he's going to tell them now, after their wilderness experience, he's now going to tell them exactly what he's done in this whole time of their wilderness, in this whole time of what they've just been through, in this book of Numbers, that this whole process of Numbers, of what they've been going through. Now he's going to expose it all to them. Because remember, Deuteronomy is the book of words, where he is going to speak and remind you of the things that he has spoken in the last, from Exodus, from Leviticus, from Numbers. He tells you, he repeats everything here, but in a different way. And it's his words that he starts to speak. So we are going to read from Deuteronomy 8, from verses 1 to 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the Israelites' test, and then I'm going to give you Yahushua's test. Then I'm going to give you the Israelites' test, because Yahushua went through 3 tests. And I'm going to bring them together, because this is the very thing that the Father spoke to me last week Friday when he woke me up that morning. I was to go listen to the teaching that he gave me already last year when he brought this teaching to me, but now he's told me to bring it in light of the way that it's going to be now. So not the way that I preached it then, but in light of the things that we're going through right now, and to understand what is ahead of us. Because at the end of the day, this is the thing that we need to be able to be prepared for. Because the Father is preparing us for the future things that are ahead of us. And this is the things that I need to relay to you. So let's read from Deuteronomy chapter 8 from verse 1. God to do every command which I command you today, that you might live, and shall increase, and go in, and shall possess the land which Yahuwah swore to your fathers. Okay, so if we're going to want to enter into the promised land, which is now when we're going to reign and rule with Yahushua, because at the end of the day, that is what we're going to be prepared for. We are the last generation. We are the generation that is being prepared. We are in this time of this tribulation that is on our doorstep right now, and we are the generation that is going to be prepared, that is being prepared for the coming of the Messiah. So we need to understand that this is the generation that is going to be prepared to reign and rule. So God to do every command which I command you today, that you might live and shall increase, and go in and shall possess the land which Yahuwah swore to your fathers. And you shall remember that Yahuwah your Lua led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you, to prove you, to know what is in your heart, whether you guard his commands or not. So there you go. So I understand. He has led you in this wilderness. He has put you in this place. He's taught you his word. He told you Leviticus. He called you. He gave you his instructions. He told you how you are to serve him, the things that he wants you to do. Then he brings you into this wilderness now. And these are the things, how do you behave? From the time that you came out of Egypt, how have you behaved? And these are the things that we need to understand. We get saved, we get baptized, we get mikvahed in the water, and then we start our walk with him. And this is the thing. We say that we love him. We read this word. We know this word. And then we will be tested in this word. We will be tested. And that is why our life has been filled with trials and tests. It's been filled with trials and tests. My goodness, if your life has not been like that, then I don't know. Then because my life, from the moment I got saved, this is the way it's been. It's been one trial and one test after the other. And that's the way it's been. And it's still like that today. I mean, just for me to be able to get this message out, it was a trial all of its own. It was a test all of its own. I cannot believe the amount of distractions that came my way. And so he says, and to humble you and let you suffer hunger. Oh my goodness. Is he going to allow us to suffer hunger? Oh, but we don't want to hear that. Are we going to have to go and maybe only have manna? I mean, understand, if they were only being given manna from heaven, that was all that they had, was the manna. They were not having all this other extra luxuries. That's why they were craving for the leeks and the garlic and all these other things that they wanted to come their way. But he's telling them, and he humbled you, and let you suffer hunger, and fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahuwah. And what was he trying to teach them? My word is more important than the food that you're going to eat. I'm going to teach you to be able to obey my word. You need to eat this word of mine. You need to hear the instructions that I'm giving you. You need to hear that which I am speaking to you, because this is going to be more important to you than the food that you're going to eat, because food you're going to be going without. I'm going to bring hunger in your path, and you better understand that when that's not there, how are you going to behave? Like those Israelites, when the water's not there and the food is not there, how are you going to behave? Like they did. Oh, they are going to put him to the test now, because, oh no, hang on a second, where is he now? You brought us out of this Egypt so that we could die in the wilderness. What was coming out of them? And so at the end of the day, we need to understand, he could have given them the manna straight away, but he let them dwell a few days, that they had no water, that they had no food. And only then he decided to give them water and to give them food, when they started to squirm like the worm. But he turns around and he says, he humbled you. So that word humble is the word anah, which is the word H6031. the concordance number 6031. And that word humble is to be afflicted, to oppress, to be afflicted, to bow down, to become low, to be downcast, to be humiliated. So we will go through all of this to see what is in our hearts. He will bring us down. He will bring us low. He will bring us to be downcast. We will be humiliated. We will be afflicted. We will be oppressed. To do what? To humble us. To see how are we going to behave. Because only then will we know what's really in our heart. So you see, these tests that come our way are to test us in the way that we will be able to behave to know what's really in our hearts. So look and see now. My goodness, already now. My husband's boss, oh my goodness, we won't even go there. Because now, he wants him to be able to work now on commission only. So it's his petrol, it's everything to go to work now. He's got to go out and see clients. And then he is only going to pay him 5%. 5%. That's all he's prepared to pay. Which means he needs to sell 500,000 rand worth of pots in order for him to be able to remotely get anything close to the salary of what he was getting. In a time of when it is now in his trade, it's only level 2. When they are really, when the workshops are going to be opened, is only level 2. So these are the challenges that are on our doorstep. And so he'll go there and he's trying to do his best without griping, without moaning, without complaining. And as difficult as what his boss is being with him. And all I keep saying to him is, babes, understand. Father is in control. He is not your provider. Your boss is not your provider. ABBA YAWHUAH is your provider. We've been down this road before, when you didn't have a job, and the Father made sure that somehow we survived. And if we don't have more, we have less. It doesn't matter. And the apartment in Israel, Father will sort it out. Because it's out of my control. But how am I going to behave in this time of this test? It's a test. We are all going into this test. As people are not working, they're not being able to pay their bills. One of these days they will not be able to buy food. What is going to be the most important thing that we are going to be able to go through? And what he's saying is, man does not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahuwah. The test is if we obey his word above the food that we need to eat. So, are we going to obey his word above the food that we need to eat? Are we going to bow down our knee? And we're going to look at this now, as I'm going to present it to you from a different scenario of days ahead of us. So, we are going to look at Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 to 4. So, I suggest you put something in your Bibles between Matthew chapter 4 and between Deuteronomy chapter 8, because we are going to be between these two books. So we're going to be between Matthew chapter 4 and Deuteronomy chapter 8. So, in Matthew chapter 4, we are going to see Yahushua now gets, just like them, they were mikvad, went through the Red Sea, came into the wilderness, and then confronted with their tests in the wilderness. Yahushua is mikvad by John the Immerser, Yochanan the Immerser, and straight after this, where does he go? So let's see. And Yahushua was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. So if we go just a few scriptures before, it says in verse 16, and having been immersed, Yahushua went up immediately from the water, and see, the heavens were opened, and he saw the Spirit of Yahuwah descending like a dove and coming upon him. And see, a voice out of the heavens saying, This is my Son, the beloved, in whom I delight. Now understand, this is the Son of Yahuwah. We are his beloved children. And these beloved children don't want to have to suffer anything. But this is his Son, Yahushua himself. Straight after he's been mikved, where does he go? Straight away, he goes into a wilderness. These are the things that we need to understand, people. You see, we have this thing that we need to conquer and reign in this world. But we do not understand the Father's pattern. And when we understand the Father's pattern, we will understand clearly what the Father is wanting to do. He needs to equip a people that is going to reign and rule. It was supposed to have been on this earth at the time, but unfortunately, the rulership was given over the day that Adam and Eve was kicked out of the garden. And now Messiah Yahushua has come to give us authority to be able to overcome all the tests and the trials that are going to come our way, so that the day when he comes to reign and rule in all esteem and all glory, we will then be reigning and ruling with him. But you are not reigning and ruling on this earth. Not the way it is right now. Because that's not what the Bible says. It's not for this dispensation. You need to understand that. You need to understand that the disciples also thought that Messiah Yahushua, when he came, was going to conquer and be their king. Here comes the son of Ben David. Now this is the Messiah we've been waiting for. But he came as the suffering servant of Ben Joseph. And when he comes again, then he comes as the conquering king of the Lion of the tribe of Yehudah. And then he's going to reign and rule. But we need to understand that he came as a lamb to be led to the slaughter. And he gives us authority to overcome the trials and the tests on this earth, so that we can become a deliverer for others, and so that they can accept him, so that they can be prepared to become priests as well for him, to reign and rule with him. And so we are going to look at this test, his first test. And Yahushua was led up by the Ruach into the wilderness to be tried by the devil. So, if we think that we are not going to be tried by Hasatan, we've got another thing coming our way. Because we are being tried. Because the whole world at the moment is under the sway of the evil one. And after having fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. Just like the Israelites were hungry. They'd come out of Egypt, and now they are hungry. And the trier came and said to him, If you are the Son of Yahuwah, command that these stones become bread. Now, he knew he was the Son of Yahuwah, but now he's saying, if you are. So if you are the Son of Yahuwah, you have all this authority, you have all this power, why don't you just command these stones to become bread? You don't have to go through this test. You don't have to suffer. Why do you have to suffer? Just command and demand and get yourself out of this immediately. You have all this authority and power. You don't need to go through this test. You see, we need to be able to understand that there are things that the Father brings into our lives. He wanted to humble them. But you see, this is the problem. Many people have been through nothing, and they have not been prepared for the things that are ahead of them, because they have prayed every single test and trial that they have had to go through away. No problem. You want to pray it away? I give you what you want. No problem. But you have lost out on the fact that you were supposed to have overcome that test to be able to help someone else that was going to come in your path, that you could have helped because you've been in that test and now you help them to overcome. So listen to what he says. And the trier came and said to him, If you are the son of Yahuwah, command these stones to become bread. But he answered and said, It has been written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahuwah. Now this is exactly the same test that was presented to these Israelites in the wilderness. That the Father was trying to test them, humble them. The Father was having to afflict them. The Father was having to oppress them. The Father was having to allow them to be bowed down. The Father was having to allow them to become low. The Father was helping them to become downcast and be humiliated, so that they would be able to learn to trust in Him and put their faith and trust in Him above what their bodies needed at that time. Now listen to how the Father has brought this. What we are going to do, what are we going to do when we don't have food? What are we going to do when the food shortage is going to come? Because that's coming. So when the food shortage is coming, when we don't have money, what will we resort to? Will we become unlawful in the things and break His commands in order to get food, like where we are right now, where my son stays? Just outside our gate, we've got like a little park place, with just a little park. It's like a square block, and it's a little park, and they have little rabbits that run around there. There's about 5 rabbits. So when the time comes when we don't have food, are we going to go kill the little rabbit to eat the rabbit when the Father says that that rabbit is unclean? But we will turn around and say, but we need to eat because we need to survive. But the Father says, you shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the Father's mouth. So at the end of the day, the way that the Father showed me this test is, are you going to resort to being obedient to His word and to every word that He has commanded, that even if it means you need to die because you do not have food, but you will be obedient to His word, and you will not go and eat that which is unclean? I present this to you today because that's what He presented to me. Are we going to resort to an unlawful thing? So what are we going to do? Are we going to resort to going to steal food because we don't have food? We're going to steal food and do that which is unlawful and break His commands. That's what He means by man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Father. So you take the word of His mouth as your highest authority, even when your body is not going to have the food. I know a friend of mine that was telling me that at her daughter's company, this woman has been sort of like ministering to her daughter for a while. They work together. And her daughter this friend of mine's daughter is still an unbeliever, doesn't want to believe. And this friend of hers is working with her. But now, obviously in this lockdown time, they were not able to work, and the company didn't pay them a salary either. And, fortunately my friend is in Portugal, so she's sending money to her daughter. Because my friend is working online, so she's still getting a salary. So she was able to send money to her daughter that is able to help her daughter to pay the bills and everything. But this friend of hers, both her and her husband are not working, and they've got 2 small children. And now both of them are they're these reborn Christians, go to church, and this friend of hers has been trying to minister to my friend's daughter, because, understand, we are all praying for her to come into the kingdom. And now the husband, because there's no money coming in, they are in dire straits, and now the husband has started to sell. He's been able to get a contact that is giving him smokes, and he's selling cigarettes illegally under cover. So what will we resort to? Now, what is the testimony that they have to give her of ABBA YAWHUAH? So where is he? So what will she say? Well, you see, why would he do this? Because every time the thing that she always brings is the fact that where is God in all of this? Why would he do this? You see, now they don't even have food to feed their children, but instead of waiting on ABBA YAWHUAH, that he's the one who's going to eventually bring you manna from heaven, and he's allowing you to go through this to see if you will be obedient to his word. No, we lose our testimony by the fact that what do? We turn to the arm of the flesh as our source of support. And that's what the devil wanted Yahushua to do. He wanted him. Yahushua was to turn those rocks into bread so that he could feed himself. He wanted him to turn to the arm of his flesh, to use his authority and power that he had to be able to supply a genuine need. And his need was that he needs to eat. What are we going to do when we are confronted with this test? We must have faith and trust in him, and he will provide in a supernatural way. And even if he doesn't provide in a supernatural way, which we're going to get to with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we will still go through whatever the process is that the Father wants us to go through. But we will not bow to the ways of our flesh and to unlawful ways and to break his commands in order to keep ourselves alive. Because we will read a scripture that says, you are not to love your life unto death. So we will get there as we go a bit deeper into this message. So now we look at Deuteronomy chapter 8. So let's go back to Deuteronomy. So Deuteronomy chapter 8, and we are going to look at verses 4 to 6. And it says, your garments did not wear out on you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years. Thus you shall know in your hearts that as a man disciplines his son, so Yahuwah, your Elohim, disciplines you. Therefore, you shall guard the commands of Yahuwah your Elohim to walk in his ways and fear him. So, he will sustain us. He didn't allow any of their clothes to be able, their garments did not wear out on them, and nor did their feet swell in those 40 years. So he will sustain you no matter what. But we are to be obedient, to guard his commands, and to walk in his ways, and to fear him. And what does he say? And you are to know in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so Yahuwah your Elohim disciplines you. If you do not know that Abba Yahuwah will discipline you, then you don't know him. because He will discipline you. I mean, my goodness, I get pulled through a bush backwards most of the time because He disciplines me. Because we are to fear Him. You see, the fear of Yahuwah is the beginning of wisdom. And the only reason why there is not any wisdom in the church is because people have lost the fear of Yahuwah. We have made Him our friend, and we have not understood that He is our parent who is... Now remember, the relationship between... There must always be the right relationship between the parent and a child, because the minute the child becomes like a friend, then the parent is no longer able to discipline that child, because it becomes more of a friend, and they lose the fear of their parent because now they've become like a friend. So we must never lose that reverential respect that we are to have for the Father, to understand that we will not put Him to the test, that we will not sit and point our finger at Him and demand and command because we think we are somebody. We need to understand that He will discipline us, and we will allow Him to discipline us and have His way, and we are to understand that we are to humble under His mighty hand when He wants to be able to discipline us and bring us through a process. And we are not going to throw scripture in His face, because we are going to see this. We are going to see this clearly, because He is going to have His way. And if He chooses not to answer your prayer, He will not answer it. And if He chooses to let you go through something because He's wanting to discipline you, or because He's wanting you to suffer, then you are to allow Him to have His way. Because I think this is one of the biggest problems, and this is why I say that's the difference between what I see in with the Hebrew people, with the Jewish people, and the Christians, is that the Christians have become too familiar, and they don't reverence and they don't fear ABBA YAWHUAH. They don't. They treat Him as a friend, and they do not keep the reverence and the fear of Him and the respect. You will not speak to your Father the way that you want. You will not be disrespectful to your father, nor to your mother. So at the end of the day, how do we think that we can be disrespectful to our Creator when we start to demand and command and have our way like spoiled brats? What do we think we're doing? This is one of the things that you see amongst the Jewish people. You see a reverential love and fear for ABBA YAWHUAH. Let me tell you something. That is why when you come into that world, you don't dress as you want. You don't go as you want. But when it comes to the Christians, they can just come as they want. They don't care. But when it comes to the Jewish people, there's such a reverence for the Father. When it comes to that wall, there's a reverence. They want you to reverence His holy presence. There's a reverence in His holy presence, man. If you were to come into a room, we would hit the ground. Who do we think we are? But there's that reverence and fear that we have lost as the people of Yahuwah that have come out of a church system. Because a church has said, well, we'll build our golden calf and tomorrow we'll have a feast to Yahuwah. You know, we can just be in the mixed seed all we like. No, it doesn't work like that. There is a reverential fear because He will discipline us. Just like a parent does. He is our Abba Father. He is our Father. Are you hearing? He is our Father. And as a Father, we are to respect Him. We are to honor Him. Because we're going to look at this test with Yahushua. So He sustains us. We might not have much, but we know that He disciplines us. That we are not to be arrogant. Okay, we've covered all of that. And so in Matthew chapter 4, verses 5 to 7, let's go to Matthew chapter 4, and we're going to look at this test where Yahushua is concerned so that we understand this test. So let's look and see from verse 5 to 7. And it says, "And the devil took him up into a set-apart city, and set him on the edge of the set-apart place, and said to him, If you are the son of Yahuwah, throw yourself down. For it has been written, He shall command His messengers concerning you. In their hands they bear you up, so that you do not dash your foot against a stone." Oh my goodness, the very Psalm 91 that all of us are quoting, that all the people are quoting. Oh, you know what? He is going to sustain us. He will not allow our foot to go against a stone. Exactly what He's saying. Throw yourself from this cliff, because His angels will protect you. And what does Yahushua say? Yahushua said to him, "It has been written, you shall not try Yahuwah your Lord." Okay. So now we look and see, what did he mean by "you shall not try Yahuwah your Lord"? Because where was he tried before? You shall not try Yahuwah your Lord. Where was he tried before? Let's go look at Exodus. And this is why we need to see this. That is why we need a foundation. If we do not have a foundation, how are we going to stand? Because you see, if we do not, every scripture that Yahushua quotes to him is from the Torah. Understand, he's quoting him the Torah. I mean, there, when he tells him that, when he says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth, he's quoting Deuteronomy 8, verse 3. So there's power in the Torah. Just in case you thought that the Torah is not relevant anymore, there's such power in the Torah that Hasatan is having to humble by the fact that Yahushua is quoting the Torah to him. Then when he says to him, "You shall not try Yahuwah your Lord," that is coming from Deuteronomy 6:16. That is coming from Deuteronomy. He's quoting the Torah to him again. Power in the Torah. He knows his foundation. He knows the foundation that he was given, the instructions and the word that was spoken by Abba Yahuwah's mouth to give him a foundation of his faith. This is the foundation of his faith. So let's go look at Exodus chapter 17 from verse, actually let's just read from verse 1. So all the congregation of the children of Israel set out on their journey from the wilderness of Sin, according to the mouth of Yahuwah, and camped in Rephidim. And there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people strove with Moshe and said, "Give us water to drink." And Moshe said to them, "Why do you strive with me? Why do you try Yahuwah? Why are you trying Yahuwah?" So you are complaining. Why are you complaining? If you're really the Father, then you will be able to come. How many times people say, if you are Yahuwah, then this is what you'll do for me. Then this is what you'll do for me. Really? Now listen to what they say. And the people thirsted there for water. And the people grumbled against Moshe and said, "Why do you bring us out of Mitzrayim to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" Then Moshe cried out to Yahuwah, saying, "What am I to do with this people? Yet a little, and they shall stone me." And Yahuwah said to Moshe, "Pass over before the people and take them with some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand your rod with with which you struck the river and go, and see, I'm standing before you there on the rock of Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people shall drink. And Moshe did, and so before the eyes of the elders of Israel. And he called the name of the place, listen, he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the strife of the children of Israel, and because they tried Yahuwah, saying, is Yahuwah in our midst or not? How many people are going to try Yahuwah and say, well, if he's in our midst, he's going to do this for me. And if he's in my midst, he's going to do this for me. You see, just like that movie, on that I Still Believe, he healed. And then the next test comes along. And now, silence. How are we going to behave when he doesn't do what we want? Now let me tell you something. In my dream, when the Father told me, there was a dream that I had. And this is where I say, we are not to put Yahuwah to the test. Because, listen carefully, if Yahuwah is going to say to you, pack a bag, and you know, according to the word, that there's going to be famine, and the Father says, gather some food. You need to buy food, you need to buy supplies, and you're hearing people, the prophets are speaking and saying that there's going to be lack of food. You need to be able to gather food. I mean, if you are not going to do that, and when the time comes, like, let me give you in my dream. When I had my dream, I think it was in 2000, and it was in my dream of when I did the prophetic insight of 2017. It was my very prophetic dream that I had when I heard the sirens and the greatest blackout, and the Father said, pack a bag, it's time to go. The war is going to come. And he told me that I was to pack a bag and I was to go. There were other people in the house with me, and I said to them, pack a bag, we need to go. No. The Father is not telling, we don't need to go anywhere. He will protect us. Where we are, he will protect us. Now, if you were given an instruction to go, and you stay, when the time comes, when you are going to be just like them, quoting Psalm 91 and saying, oh, no, he will give his angels charge over me. But the instruction was given to you for you to go. And if you stayed, that destruction is going to come upon you. It's like that little, I've heard of the story of where there's this flood that happens. And then these people are stuck in their house, or this person stuck in their house. And the flood is coming, and they had time to go and they didn't go. Then someone brings a boat and says, come, get into the boat. Come, let us save you. No. Abba Father's going to save me. And then they're going to send a helicopter, and the helicopter's going to come, and the helicopter comes to be able to save you. No. Abba Father's going to save me. And the next thing, you drown. And then the person came before the Father in heaven and said, why did you let me drown? He says, my child, I told you the first time that you were to go. When the people left, you were to go with them, but you stayed. I sent a boat, and you didn't want to get in the boat. I sent a helicopter, and you didn't want to get into the helicopter. So what more can I do? You drowned. You see, that's what I'm referring to. We are not to put ABBA YAWHUAH to the test. If ABBA YAWHUAH starts to speak, and he tells you that you are to pack a bag and you are to go, then you are to listen to what he has to say. If someone else turns around and says, no, you know what, he's going to protect us, you will put him to the test. And you will not get the deliverance that you should. Because just like Yahushua, he had to rebuke Hasatan and said, you will not try ABBA YAWHUAH. And this is exactly what they did here. They griped, they moaned, they complained. How many people are going to fall away? Listen to me carefully as I tell you today. How many people are going to fall away because they will have themselves said, no, don't worry about it. He's going to protect me. There's nothing going to happen to me. I am going to be fine. And the Father's telling them to go, and the Father's telling them to collect food, and the Father's telling them to prepare. Like He said to me, He said, what have you got in your hand? When the lockdown started, He said, you need to buy food. And now He's telling me again, you need to buy food. Great famine is coming. Famine is on your doorstep, and He's confirmed it in His word. And He's telling me, famine is coming. And I'm hearing it from the one side, and I'm hearing it from another side. And then He took me to Scripture again today. Great famine upon the land. You need to gather food. And there's no ways we can gather food for the amount of time that we're going to be able to be in wherever we're going to be. I don't know. But anyway, we will not most probably be able to have enough food for all of that time. But guess what? What He said to me was this: if you have 1 tin of beans, if you have 1 packet of flour, if you have 1 bottle of oil, whatever it is, I can multiply it. But if you have nothing, because you didn't trust me, that, if you just stand back and say, oh no, He'll supply, what are you going to do? He'll supply. Don't worry, He'll supply. There's times that He's going to supply. When ours finally runs out, He will supply. But what He said to me was, if you have a tin of beans, you have to believe that the last tin of beans, it's going to multiply. And whatever you have, I will multiply. Like I said, when I sent out the disciples and I said, gather, go see. And He said, the people are hungry, that we need to eat. He didn't rain down, they didn't rain down manna from heaven. He said, go see, what do the people have? 2 loaves and 5 fish. So what happened with 2 loaves and 5 fish? They fed the 5,000. The multitudes were fed. But there was something in their hands. And so what I'm saying is, we need to be wise in everything that we do right now. We need to understand what happened with Job's wife. She said, curse ABBA YAWHUAH, at the time of when it was really, at the time when now things are getting dark and things are going difficult, and now the devil is saying, oh, you know what? Just throw yourself down, or whatever it is. I mean, we need to understand Job's wife herself said, curse ABBA YAWHUAH and die. You see, this is when the greatest falling away is going to come. Because when the destruction comes, we are going to be believing for certain things to happen, and they're not going to happen. And when they don't, what happens? Imagine you believing to have been raptured out of here, and when it doesn't happen, then what's going to happen then? You are going to point your finger at Him, just like these Israelites in the wilderness were pointing their finger and said, where's the water? Where's this? And, complaining. And where's ABBA YAWHUAH now? Where's He now? And then you are going to fall away because you're going to turn against Him. And this is why I'm saying we really, really need to understand that there's dark days ahead of us, and if we do not understand our scriptures and understand the Father's pattern and the Father's way, we are going to understand He put His own Son through tests. He put these Israelites through the tests. He disciplined them. He humbled them. He allowed them to suffer. So now we're going to look at Deuteronomy chapter 8 from verses 7 to 20. And it says, and for Yahuwah YAWHUAH is bringing you into a good land, a land of streams of water and fountains and streams that flow out of the valley and the hills, and a land of wheat and barley and vines and trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land in which you eat bread without scarcity, in which you do not lack at all, a land whose stones are iron and out of whose hills you dig copper. And you shall eat and be satisfied, and shall bless YAWHUAH for the good land which he has given you. Be on guard, lest you forget YAWHUAH. Be on guard, by not guarding his commands and his right rulings and his laws, which I command you today, lest you eat and shall be satisfied, and build lovely houses and shall dwell in them, and your herds and your flocks increase, and your silver and your gold are increased, and all that you have is increased. So you see, it's all about this prosperity gospel. Oh, the Father has blessed me, blessed me, blessed me, blessed me, blessed me, blessed me. That your heart then becomes lifted up, and you forget YAWHUAH, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, from the house of bondage, who led you through the great and awesome wilderness, fiery serpents and scorpions and thirst, where there was no water, who brought water for you out of the flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness manna, which your fathers did not know, in order to humble you and to try you, to do you good in the end. And then you shall say in your heart, my power, my strength of my hand have made for me this wealth. Now you must understand something. None of the wealth that you have acquired is because it is yours. He has given you the authority to create wealth. So there are some people that are more wealthy than others, and others that do not have that wealth. And the Father is the one who gives the wealth, but He does not give the wealth that it was supposed to be for yourself. The wealth was supposed to be for the glory and the honor of His name, to be able to be for the glory and the honor of His name for His kingdom. But that's not what has happened, unfortunately, because many people, just like this verse has said, it's my power and the strength of my hand that have made for me the wealth. But you shall remember YAWHUAH, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth, in order to establish His covenant, which He swore to His fathers, as it is today. So He has given you the power to get that wealth. That wealth is not for yourself. That wealth was supposed to have been for His kingdom. To get wealth in order to establish His covenant, which He swore to His fathers, as it is today. And it shall be, if you by any means forget YAWHUAH and follow after other mighty ones and serve them and bow yourself to them, I have warned you this day that you shall certainly perish, like the nations which YAWHUAH is destroying before you. So you are to perish because you did not obey the voice of YAWHUAH. So at the end of the day, we were to acquire this wealth, but this wealth was not to be able to give us power for ourselves. He says, well, you are building. That's why he turns around and he says in Haggai chapter 2, let's just go there quickly, in Haggai chapter 2. And this is exactly what is going to happen at the moment, because understand something. All that we have acquired is all going to be lost, because at the end of the day, when there comes to be one world order, one world power, we need to understand that if we do not have this, they're going to have a cryptocurrency, because eventually they're going to start saying this money is contaminated because now the virus is going to be on the money, and now we can't have exchanging of money because the exchanging of money is bringing about this virus. So even Elsie said today when she went out, this woman that she went to be able to go buy some stuff, they were even spraying the card. They sprayed the machine, they sprayed the card, and then they put the card in because her hand touched the card, and when they took it out, then they sprayed the machine again, and this is how it is now. They'll spray your card. So eventually they're going to say, this is not safe anymore, so now we need a cryptocurrency. Now then, to access your cryptocurrency, you're not going to be able to have a card because a card is being touched, so it's going to have to be something that's going to have to be implanted in you somehow. Because like that, you're not going to be able to bring the virus, because if you just put your hand or, whatever it is, that this bracelet or that you're going to have, whatever it is that's going to come, is how it's going to access everything. And so this is all being geared up to what needs to happen. And so that is why we need to understand that at the end of the day, all the wealth that we have acquired is not going to really be able to help us, because at the end of the day, when we are going to have to run, we're not going to be able to take all of this with us. So let's go and read Haggai. Haggai. It is time for you yourselves to dwell in your paneled house. So we're going to read Haggai from verse 3. Haggai chapter 1, verse 3. And the word of Yahuwah came to Haggai the prophet, saying, Is it time for you yourselves to dwell in your paneled houses, and this house is in ruins? And now thus says Yahuwah of hosts, consider your ways. You have sown much, but brought in little. Eat, but do not have enough. Drink, but are not filled with drink. Clothe yourselves, but no one is warm. But he who earns wages to put it into a bag with holes. Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, consider your ways. Go up to the mountain, and you shall bring wood and build the house, and I will be pleased with it, and let me be esteemed, said Yahuwah. When you looked for much, then see, it came to little, and when you brought it home, I would blow on it. Why, declares Yahuwah? Because of my house which lies in ruins, while each of you runs to his own house. So at the end of the day, we need to understand we are to be building our spirit man, and to be able to be uplifting this spirit temple that's to have his dwelling. And it's about his kingdom. Everything is about his kingdom. Seek first the kingdom of Yahuwah and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. So at the end of the day, even that which we have acquired was to be for his kingdom, for him to be able to establish his kingdom. What difference does it make? It's that scripture that says where you store your riches with moths that's going to come and eat it. And that's exactly what's going to happen in the time that we're coming into now. Because at the end of the day, it's all going to be taken away. Because think about it. If we are going to go into this time now of where we are going to have this cryptocurrency, and there's going to be a system, and this is the system that they're going to give you, and they're going to say, right, I saw it almost like a Monopoly game. When we start the Monopoly game, each one is going to be given this amount of money. Let the game begin. And so at the end of the day, what's going to happen is, every economy of every country is basically crashing one after the other. How the heck are we going to come out of this and think that the economy is going to pick up again? So it's brought it to a place of where every economy, I actually read something yesterday, that this has been the plan of the elite for the last 10 years. They already put a bill in, a document in place in 2010 of all of this that they were going to do, and we are right on path with what they're wanting to do. And so at the end of the day, every economy has to crash, and then what do? They say, oh, don't worry, we will give you the money. And each one will be able to say, no, don't worry, even if you don't have money, we will give you the money. And now there will be money put into your bank account and everything. And so then they'll say to you, okay, now you sign a pledge, you sign an allegiance to us, and we will be you will sign an allegiance, a pledge, that we will be able to, we'll give you this finance, but you've got to sign an allegiance where you will sign away your life, basically, to them. So, if the finances that we get will become our God, if money has become our God, then we were going to fall to the God that we will serve. Because if we are going to try and keep that finances and we're not willing to lose it, then we will bow down to the system in order to be able to have it. So that they don't, at the end of the day, how many people have sold their souls? How many preachers have sold their souls for the power that they have by bowing down to the enemy themselves? Because we are going to look at this very clearly now in Matthew chapter 4. So let's go to Matthew. From verse 8. So in Matthew chapter 4 from verse 8 it says, "And again the devil took him up on a very high mountain, and showed him all the reigns of the world and their esteem, and said to him, All these I give you, if you fall down and worship me. Then Yahushua said to him, Go, Hasatan, for it has been written, You shall worship Yahuwah your Elohim, and him alone you shall serve. And the devil left him, and see, messengers came and attended to him." So now we're going to see. This is a test that we are going to see, where people are either going to deny all and walk away from their possessions and all their wealth, or they will bow down to the systems of this world. So at the end of the day, we need to understand something. You see, you cannot serve two masters. That's why it said clearly, you're either going to serve the master of money, or you're either going to serve the master Yahuwah. But you cannot serve two masters. If you're going to want to save your money, and you're going to want to be able to have that money have a hold over you, then you are going to have to bow down to that God. And the God is going to be the one that's going to be presented to you, that is going to give you all this power. And you see exactly what was presented to Yahushua. Let me tell you what was presented to Yahushua. What was presented to Yahushua is this. At the end of the day, what was he saying to him? All these kingdoms, you see, all of this, he says, see, what does he say? He says, again the devil took him up, and he said, All these I shall give you if you fall down and worship me. So he took him to a mountain and showed him all the reigns of the earth and their esteem and their glory. And he said, I will give you all of this if you just bow down and worship me. Now, at the end of the day, this was the test of power, giving him the power to say, I give you the power now. You don't need to go and suffer anything. You don't need to go to the cross. You don't need to go to the stake and suffer at the stake so that you can eventually get this power only when he comes back to reign and rule. So he was giving him the power to get it now. So understand something. There is a deception, a delusion that's going to come, that is an anti-Messiah. And you need to understand, this anti-Messiah is not, it's not anything that these people have been saying. You know, these people are saying, oh, he's got to be this man and that. This anti-Messiah is going to come and he's going to present himself like the Messiah himself. So he will come and be the Jesus Christ. Listen to me carefully. That's why Yahushua says in Matthew chapter 24, if they say, there he is, don't go. He's already told you that. That's why it's important that we know his word. If we do not know his word, we will be deceived. So, this is why these people that are speaking prophetic words and telling you that we are going to have authority and power now, that is exactly what Hasatan is saying. If you just bow down to me, I'll give you all these things. So this authority and power is going to be given to you by you bowing down to the systems of this world. If you're not going to bow down to the systems of this world, what do you think is going to happen to you? Suffering. Because you will not have money, you will not be able to buy, you will not be able to trade if you do not take the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is going to be together with all this monetary system that's going to come, that's going to be with all of this that's going to be given us in order for us to be able to trade and live. Already now, if you go into a shop, you've got to have they got to test your temperature and all of this. This is just the beginning. This is getting you used to the test that you're going to have to go through. So the next one is going to be maybe that you're going to have to be tested with the vaccine. You're going to have to receive a vaccine. I mean, Elsie was telling me today that they had Paula White busy praying in Parliament and praying for, Father, please bring the vaccine, produce this vaccine, that we will have a vaccine. The other day I was listening to another pastor that was also on, my husband had something on, and they were showing this pastor, and this pastor was also saying, we will finally return back to our churches and return back to everything. When we finally have this vaccine, then we will be able to return back to our congregations so how many pastors are going to sell their souls so that they can have their congregations and have their money back again? How many pastors are going to sell their souls? People, we are in for the greatest deception that people will even understand. So, in 1 John 5 verses 19, it says, we know that we are of ABBA, and that the whole world is under the sway of the wicked one. In 1 John 5 verses 19, it tells you that the whole world is under the sway of the wicked one. And the only one who's going to come and destroy the wicked one is when Yahushua comes and he's going to destroy him. We need to overcome the things that are going to come our way. We need to overcome. We need to be able to have trust and faith in the Father. And there's many that are going to be able to, he's sealing them off. He sealed them off with his name. But they're going to be going through much tests. You just need to read through the book of Revelation and you will understand. The enemy's going to come against them. So, and so therefore we need to understand these are real tests that we will face in the not too distant future. And we need to start preparing ourselves. We need to understand that there is going to be many tests. And we will need to overcome. If necessary, we will need to die we'll need to die if we need to for our faith. Just like Yahushua had to face these tests, we need to understand that we too are going to have to face tests. Just like the Israelites in the wilderness had to face tests, we need to understand that we too are going to have to face tests. These tests had to present them before they were to be found faithful in order to enter into the promised land. If we're going to want to enter into our promised land, we need to understand that we are going to have to overcome and face these tests. No servant is greater than his master, is what Yahushua spoke to us when he went and washed the disciples' feet. If they hated me, they will hate you. So, the next session that we're going to look at is we're going to continue to look at a little bit more of these tests. And we will then look at Daniel. We're going to look at Daniel because we need to understand what is going to present ourselves. What is it that's going to come our way? So, we will end the session here. And then we start the next session.